Hello, welcome to Any Mask. Today we're making 4 masks out of 2 pieces of fabric. These are fat quarters. They measure 18 by 22. The pattern we use is 2 pieces of fabric. The PDF will be in the description below, and there's 1 piece that is a template. So here's our 3 pieces we're using. We're making the medium size. So the fabric is folded along the 22-inch side, so you have a piece that is 11 by 18. Take the big pattern piece, line up the bottom on the fold, and trace the sides. Next, take the little pattern piece, put it right next to the big pattern piece, trace around that, and trace your second big pattern piece. Move the piece down an inch and trace along the top. You don't use the top inch of the pattern. I just leave it on there for symmetry. Next, you're going to cut directly on the lines that you made. You're going to get 2 big pieces and 2 little pieces out of each fat quarter. So you'll see that we get 2 big pieces that are folded over and 2 little pieces that are single that we then fold in half. I've turned everything up to the folded side up, and we're going to mark the lines that will be the darts that will form the nose and chin contours of each mask. We have a second fat quarter here because we're making 4 masks today. We're just repeating the same process, tracing out and cutting out 2 big pieces and 2 little pieces, and marking them for the nose and chin and where we're going to sew. I'm going to take all 8 pieces to my sewing machine and start sewing the nose and chin darts. I backstitch at the beginning and end of each line of stitching to reinforce it, and I just keep putting one after the other in a chain till they're all finished. You don't need the extra fabric on both of the edges, so you're going to cut them all apart and trim off those little triangles that were formed by your stitching. I get close to the stitching, but not too close, maybe about 1/8 of an inch. You don't want them to come apart when you open it up. Now to finish off the raw edges, we're going to roll or fold up the bottom of each side of each piece twice, and that will be sewn down. I fold up about 1 centimeter and then another centimeter and iron that down. So now I have all my pieces folded and ironed, and then we're sewing these edges on the machine. I go pretty close to the edge, about 1/8 of an inch from where you folded it, and one after the other, I put them through. This one you do not need to backstitch. All of these edges will be sewn over again when we join the 2 pieces together. Trim all our pieces from each other, and then the big pieces have a little bit of overhang, and I do trim those off. This step's not absolutely necessary, but it does make it a little less bulky when you turn the whole mask inside out. Now we have all of our pieces ready to be put together. Take all of your little pieces and turn them wrong sides together, right sides out. And you can iron those flat. And now we're ready to pin the big piece to the little piece. It's nice to use contrasting fabrics for each side. For one, it's easier to remember which side goes against your face, and for 2, you get the look of 2 different masks in one because you can wear them either side out. They look good either way. All right, I've slowed down to real time so we can talk through the process of putting the 2 pieces together. First, you open that big piece up and flatten it out. I like to have my pocket facing towards the left. Then you take this little piece and line up those points. Points are where the seams are. You're going to tuck the little piece right into the big piece. Take your finger and sweep it through to make sure everything's tucked in place and the seams are lined up. Then open up the little piece so that it's lying flat. Take one side of the big piece and fold it towards the center. It's not going to reach all the way to the center. The important thing is to make sure that the edges are lined up along the line and the angle so that when you sew later, everything will be caught in place. Pin the pieces together now. I used 2 pins right in the middle, right about here and here, so that I don't have to stop to take the pins out, but you can put 4 of them around the edges. That will make it a lot easier when you're first starting out so that all the edges stay down that need to stay down. So I'm using clips here, putting in my 4 clips just to hold it together. And then we will put together the next 3 masks. I'm going to do another mask with the contrasting fabric and talk it through again just because I think this process is worth talking through one more time. So you're going to take the big piece, open it up flat, flatten it out, right side up, match the points, tuck in the small piece, open up the small piece, flatten that out, make sure it's tucked in nice. Fold one side over. There'll be a gap between the edge of the big piece and the center, which corresponds to how far you folded it back to finish the edges. Check your pocket again, turn the other piece over, and pin your layers together. I really like making 4 masks at a time like this, assembly line style, and now we can sew them all together, all at the same time. This first piece I've marked with a fabric marker so you can see sort of where I'm sewing better. I start with a back stitch and use a 1/2 inch seam allowance, which is about the width of my presser foot. Go down one side. Once I get to the middle, give it a little tug to make sure I'm not making a fold on the other side or catching anything. And then taking another pause here to make sure I am getting the other edge underneath that presser foot in the right position. And you should do a little back stitch at the other end as well. From there, just grab the next piece. Keep sewing down each side. This one I have the clips, so I have to slow down and take them out as I go. Sometimes I lift up the presser foot to make that turn, other times I just kind of plow through. Opening it up, flattening it out, making sure I catch the next piece. From there, you just continue with the 2 other masks on the one side, flip them around, and do all the other sides. There's not many loose threads because of how we chained everything together, but if there are, once we turn them all inside out, they'll be on the inside. So there's not really a need to trim anything off really neatly. Cut your pieces apart, remove your pins, and inspect your work. Time to flip. First, flip over one side so that the side tab is right side out. I took this crochet hook and I'm poking out the edges so that my corners will be more crisp. Repeat on the other side. It's pretty easy to turn inside out. Even when you're making the small pattern, there's plenty of space to turn everything right side out. Now the fabric from the big piece is right side out. In order to get the fabric for the little piece right side out, take one of the tabs, Put it through the pocket formed by the two pieces and pull all the way through. Take your fingers and flatten things out, poke out the seams, make sure everything's laying correctly. At this point too, you could take it to the iron, flatten it out, especially the side tabs because those will be turned over to create the channel where you can attach your elastic or ties. This mask can be worn with either side facing out. If you're using a thicker fabric like denim, I suggest using the denim for the little fabric piece because as you see, the big fabric piece is going to be folded over itself and you're going to have to sew through 4 layers of fabric to create the side tabs. So let's show that flipping process again with the contrasting piece of fabric. This pattern is the medium size. There's also a large and a small pattern. Both of them have a big and little piece. The process is exactly the same to make all 3 sizes. Doing masks this way using 2 fat quarters and producing 4 masks takes me about an hour, just under an hour, from the very start, cutting out the fabric, to the very end, adding the straps. Let's speed things up for the last 2 flips. Fold your side tabs down all the way up to the edge of the little piece. You can iron those out so they'll be easier to put to the sewing machine. This is a process of marking the line of stitching for the nose wire. It's a 4-inch stitch right across the middle, about a 1/2 inch from the edge. So I either use pins to mark the fabric or a fabric marker and make 2 little dots, and there's the line about where we're going to sew. Sew the tabs down with the back stitch at the beginning and end, pretty close to the edge, about 1/8 inch. I like to have plenty of space to insert whatever tie I'm going to be putting. So now to make the nose wire channel a little over a 1/2 inch from the edge, start at one mark that you made, little back stitch, try to keep the fabric underneath real flat and your line pretty straight, and go across until you hit your next mark, back stitch, and finish off. And like the other pieces, I just leave that on, grab my next one, and continue from there. So this one I did mark, start at the one mark, flatten it out, back stitch, straight stitch down about 4 inches. If you're doing a kid's mask, it's about 3.5 inches instead of 4 inches. The large mask is also 4 inches. Snip off all your loose threads and you are done with the sewing part of these masks. And I have a few different options here to show you on how you might want to attach these masks to your head. To make elastic ear loops, thread some lengths of elastic through, tie a knot, and then scooch that knot up underneath the fabric. If it's too tight or too loose, it's easy to go back, untie that knot, and adjust as necessary. There's a few things you can use for nose wire. This is a twist tie, and it slides right into that line of stitching. If you don't have elastic, you can use lots of different things. This is a strip of t-shirt that I cut about a 1/2 inch wide, and when you pull it, it forms a sort of t-shirt yarn. Here I'm using a paper clip, a large paper clip, to pull it through, so you don't need a crochet hook. There's lots of different ways to pull it through. This is a large safety pin that I'm using to pull this one through. And on this mask, I'm going to do a tying method that forms 2 slip knots that make ear loops that are adjustable. So first I'm just tying the ends of each of the t-shirt strips to secure them so they don't fray when they go through the wash. Make one long side and one short side. Lay the long side over the short side and tie the short side to itself. So you're taking the short end, tying it back on itself around the long end. Don't pull super tight, but tight enough that it holds its shape. And repeat on the other side. So make a short side and a long side. Lay the long side over the short side and go back and tie the short side to itself. Looping around, not tying too tight. This is a way of tying that any guy came up with, and it's very comfortable, soft fabric around the ears, and you can either make them as short ear loops, or what we like to do is take the long ends and tie them to themselves together. And that creates a sort of strap that you could put around the back of your head. We don't recommend this style of strapping for the child-size masks. Stick with the ear loops for kiddos. And here's just a paper clip that I flattened out and turned both the edges down, and that can also be used as a nose wire shaper. The nose wire is completely optional. It works fine without it, but if you have glasses, it can help with the fogging. So there's our 4 masks out of 2 fat quarters. Thank you so much for watching. The whole process of designing and creating these masks is fun. I really hope that the video and the patterns are helpful to you, and you will be encouraged and excited to go out and make some masks for yourself. Thanks.